Hello, students. Chapter 1 video, or your chapter, has to do with kind of an overall view of what is all involved in child development. It's introductory, and there are various facets that are mentioned about young children's development. Some of these are basic attributes such as what are the attributes of a child who's considered infant, 0 to 1. What are the facets of a toddler, 1 to 3. Preschooler, 3 to 5. Kindergartner is actually 5 to 6. So there's many facets when you stop to think about a child's development. It talks about the history, and you may wonder what's important about history. You could learn a lot about years ago and how they learned to do things, how they worked with young children as part of the historical development. Another thing your chapter discusses is atypical and typical development. And I realized that when you had that one assignment, it didn't specifically say, well, what is atypical, what is typical? And I realized, some of the students in this class aren't in early childhood, so I know I put it in the chapter overview, but I want to state it again. Typical development is the process of growing, changing, and acquiring a range of skills at approximately the same age and in the same sequence as the majority of children of a similar age. Atypical development is any aspect of that child's physical, psychological makeup that's different from what is generally accepted as typical to early childhood development. We often refer to a child with special needs or a child with disabilities as atypical. Some area of their development is delayed, and intervention services may or should be needed to help that child succeed. In the state of West Virginia, there's a wonderful program called Birth to 3 for children 0 to 3 years of age that address special needs of young children and their families. And it's a wonderful free service for all families who may need that in West Virginia. Theorists mentioned in this chapter are many, and some you may never have heard of. I'll briefly state some of them that were mentioned. Piaget is always mentioned for any course we teach on young children. In this chapter, it gives some basic information. He was known for his cognitive theory. He researched and developed his theory on how does a child learn in a cognitive sense. And he actually did research with his grandson. Most of his research was done within that format of his own family. Vygotsky is known for his sociocultural theory. He did research on how children learn through the aspects of social. He believed children could not learn as well or at all if they weren't in a social type of learning situation. For instance, family social, other children's social, community social. It was vital, and he knew that the family's culture was vitally involved also. Freud, you don't often think of as child development with early childhood, but he's mentioned here because of his psychosexual theory and those aspects as drives or motivators for behaviors. Erikson was psychosocial, and we do mention Erikson almost in all of our courses because his phases of the psychosocial are applicable to early childhood classrooms and children. There's the trust versus mistrust in the early stages. Then there is shame, doubt, autonomy when you get to the toddlers. And then there is Initiative versus guilt for the older child. Skinner and Maslow are also mentioned. They focused on the basic needs of children. Your text mentions that theory and research, according to Scott and Bowman, are wonderful tools for practicing teachers, but you must also consider other areas. They mentioned the areas of personal experience. We can 100% say that our personal experiences influence what we do. If you're going to teach, how we teach, all those experiences come together to form your basic philosophy of teaching. Another thing is we know the importance, okay, kitty, we know the importance of a child's roles in the family and community and how important that is. We can't separate the family from the child. It's impossible. So when you're working with those young children, guess what? You're working with those families on a continual basis daily. Finally, if you plan on working with young children in any capacity, you need to have an ethical basis. In our early childhood field, we have a go-to, and that is NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and they have a national-based code of ethics. You have dilemmas all the time when you're working with young children. How do you know what's right? How do you know what the important thing is to do? You go to the code of ethics, and you can find that on their website. Sorry, guys. You can find that on their website, naeysc.org. If you've never seen it before, a lot of our textbooks actually have that code of ethics in the back. This particular text does not. But it's important that you know, in whatever field you go into, the ethical practices of working with young children. And on that note, I will call it a day, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.